Hello, lovely people. Welcome to Stella's Yarn Universe. In this video, I'll show you how to crochet this little toadstool, or another kind of mushroom if you prefer. You can find the free written pattern on my website, stellasyarnuniverse.com, or the downloadable and printable PDF pattern on my Patreon page. Both links are in the description box below. So for this little project, we need DK or light worsted weight yarn or 4-ply or fingering weight, which is what I'm using. This is Shapeuse Katona in red and a natural white. And with it, I'll be using this 2.5 millimeter hook, which is something in between a size B1 and C2. We also need a yarn needle, a tiny amount of fiber fill, less than this, a stitch marker, and scissors. We begin by making the cap, so we start with the red yarn and we make a magic ring. In round 1, we make 6 single crochet in the magic ring. Then I'll place a stitch marker in the first stitch and close the magic ring. And remove the stitch marker. So now it's easier to crochet into that first stitch. In round 2, we have 6 increases. So 2 single crochet in each stitch. In round 3, we start with 1 single crochet, and then we increase in the next stitch. And we repeat this 5 more times, 6 times altogether. So we grow our stitch count from 12 to 18. That's round 3 done. In round 4, we start with 1 single crochet again and increase in the next stitch. Then we make 2 single crochet and increase in the next stitch. And we repeat the 2 single crochet and 1 increase 4 more times. And then we have 1 stitch left in the round in which we'll make a single crochet. So now we have a stitch count of 24. And in the next round, we'll start with 3 single crochet. And then we'll make an increase. And we'll repeat this 5 more times, 6 times altogether. So this is round 5 done. We have a stitch count of 30 now. And here we secure our stitch. Because now it's time to embroider the scales. We can already fasten off because the only stitch we'll make in red is a slip stitch changing to white. So I just leave a slightly longer yarn in here for that. For the scales, we'll need a 20-inch or 50-centimeter long piece of white yarn. So this long should be about enough. And we thread it on our yarn needle. And then we're going to embroider 16 little scales on the toadstool's cap. So I'll just start somewhere on the inside and work my way outward then in a spiral. So I'll insert my needle somewhere in between the first 2 rounds on the wrong side so that it comes out on the right side, and I just pull the yarn through until I have a little end here that I can secure later on. And now I'll just make 1 or 2 knots depending on the size of the scale I want to make. So these are just regular knots, so don't worry, I'm not talking about French knots if you find them as tricky as I do. Of course, feel free to make those. with embroidery thread or something. So we'll just make a tiny knot and pull it as close to the cap as possible. And then we'll go through the same spot that we went through. You could also go through the next. That would secure the scale more, but might look a bit odd, so it depends. If you go through the same spot, just don't pull too tight so that the knot doesn't get pulled through the gap. And this way we go around. You can of course make as many or few scales as you like. Let's try making 2 on top of each other. So this is just a regular knot. We make a loop and pull the yarn through it. Now we really want to make sure that it stays as close to the cap as possible. So it helps to hold your finger on it as you put it close. And that's one knot done. Now if you want to make a bigger scale, you'll add another one on top. And again, hold it in place while you pull it close. And that's it. Then we just go through the next gap on the mushroom cap. I try not to make them too regular. So the next one goes here. And through the same or the next gap. My scales are done now. This time I only made 14, but looks like it's enough. So once you're done with that, you can tie the 2 white yarn ends together on the wrong side. I'll just make a double knot, and then I cut the ends a bit shorter. I'll still use them to fill the toadstool later, but I don't want the cap to be filled, so that's why I'm cutting them now. And then we can continue crocheting. So here we make a slip stitch, and with that we change colors to white. So we go in the next stitch, and oh, actually we don't pick up this yarn at all. Since we're making a slip stitch, we pick up the white yarn and pull it through the stitch and then through the loop on our hook. And if you want to secure the yarn ends, you can tie them together here. So here we can again make a double knot. And now in the next round, we'll crochet in the back loops only. And we start with 3 single crochets. So we only crochet in the back loop of each stitch. So the front loops should be exposed, as you can see here. They will show at the edge of the cap here. And then we make a decrease. Now this is different than the regular invisible decrease that we usually make, because we make it in the back loops. And for that we start by inserting our hook in the back loop of the next stitch, and then getting the hook in the back loop of the next stitch can be a bit tricky, but we just make use of this hook shape by getting in between the front and back loop of the next stitch and then turning the hook around to get in there. So now we have both back loops on our hook, and we can pick up the yarn and pull it through them, and then pick up the yarn and pull it through the two loops on our hook. And we repeat this series of stitches 5 more times, 6 times altogether. So 3 single crochet, and a decrease. So the last stitch of the round that we'll crochet in is this slip stitch here. We finish with a decrease, so it might be a little tricky to get the hook in there, get the yarn through the slip stitch. And that's the round done. So now our stitch count of 30 is down to 24. And I'll also cut these yarn ends short. Again, I'll use them as filling, but not for the cap. I just keep this one longer because that's the magic ring yarn end. So if you want, you can place a stitch marker in the last stitch here. And then in the next round, we start with 1 single crochet, and then we make a decrease, but this time a decrease in the front loops as usual. So we go in the front loop of the next stitch, the front loop of the next one, pick up the yarn, pull it through the 2 front loops, and pick up the yarn and pull it through the 2 loops. Then we make 2 single crochet, and another decrease. And we repeat these 2 single crochet and 1 decrease 4 more times. And now we have one stitch left in the round in which we'll make a single crochet. So now our stitch count is down to 18. In the next round we start with one single crochet again. Then we have a decrease. And then we have again one single crochet and another decrease. We repeat this, one single crochet and one decrease, 4 more times, 6 times all together. And now our stitch count is down to 12. I'll just hide this one yarn end inside the cap. I use my favorite little pliers for this, but you don't need those, so I didn't mention them in the beginning. I just really like them. So if you make lots of small amigurumi, I highly recommend a pair of those. In the next round, we'll make 12 single crochets, so 1 in each of the stitches. We'll make 6 of those back loop decreases that we made in round 6. So that might be the trickiest round. So we just go in the back loop of the next stitch. And then again try to get our hook in the back loop of the next stitch by turning it. And I'll hide the red yarn in some more so that it doesn't get in the way. And then we pick up the yarn and put it through the 2 loops and pick it up again, pull it through the 2 remaining loops. So that's 1 done, 5 to go. And that's 2. And 3. I'm definitely splitting the yarn sometimes, but as long as it's not too obvious, I don't mind. And that's 4. 5, and the last one. And 6. So now we're down to a stitch count of 6. And in the next round, we can crochet normally again. So here we start with 1 single crochet in both loops of the next stitch. And then we increase in the next stitch. And then we make 2 single crochet. And increase in the next stitch. And then we'll make 1 single crochet in the final stitch of the round. We start with 3 single crochet, and increase in the next stitch. And then we repeat this once more. 3 single crochet, and an increase. We start with 2 single crochet, then we make an increase, then we make 4 single crochet, and then increase, and we single crochet in the 2 remaining stitches of the round. So this is how our toadstool looks so far. So this part is going to be pushed inside the cap. But first we will close the bottom here, and then we will crochet the skirt. But first I'll push the stalk inside the cap to know how much filling to add to the stalk. So I'm just going to use these yarn ends, and that might already be enough. And that really was enough. Also, not overfilling this bottom part of the stalk increases the chances of the little toadstool to stand. So we'll see. Now we have one of those tricky rounds left, the 6 decreases in the back loops. So this time it will hopefully be easier, but it should be. So again, we go in the back loops of the next 2 stitches. And crochet them together. Here the tricky part is just not picking up the filling. That's 2. Three, 4, 5, and 6. So here we can fasten off. And close the round. So to close this last round, we'll just go through the front loops of all 6 stitches. and then we can pull it closed. And now we go through the center of the last round, and you can actually stitch all the way through to the top. This will help make the bottom here as flat as possible, and you can also use this yarn and to stitch down the cap, but actually let's do that later. I'm getting ahead of myself. For now, just pull this as tightly as you can. Be careful if you're not using cotton yarn, because wool or acrylic breaks more easily. But the more you can pull it, the flatter this gets, and that increases the chances of the little toadstool being able to stand. So actually I don't want to stitch down the cap just yet, so I'll go through the same gap here, the magic ring, and I'll just weave in the yarn in somewhere here on the bottom side of the cap or the gills. And then we can cut it short. Now we'll crochet the ring, and the ring is crocheted out of the front loops of round 11 here that show, because we only crocheted in the back loops in this round. And so I'll just insert my hook in the front loop of the first stitch of the round. So you can see the little, you don't have to start in the first one, so it doesn't really matter, but if you want to, you can, you notice that this is the first stitch because there's a little gap here between the last one. The last one is higher from this perspective than the first one. And also here we have the color change, and this is just the end and beginning of the round. So I'll go through this first front loop and pick up the white yarn again, pull it through, and I hold the end in place, and then I'll make a chain and a single crochet in the front loop, and then we'll make one single crochet in each of the remaining front loops of this round. So we'll just go all around, crocheting in the front loops. You can also bend the stalk over if that helps. And this was the last one. So now we'll connect to the first stitch with a slip stitch. And then we fasten off, leaving a slightly long yarn end because now we want to use it to stitch down the cap. So we need our yarn needle, and to make the ring more smooth here at the end and beginning of the round, I'll just make a little invisible finish. So I'll just skip the next stitch here and go through the next one. And then I go through the front and back loop of the slip stitch that we made. And with that, I'll just stitch right through somewhere where I can squeeze in another scale. And now we want to push the stem into the cap. And here I'll just make a little stitch in the cap, and then I'll go through to the other side to stitch it down a bit. And if necessary, you can do this in other places as well. You can also use the same spots where you already have scales. And just make a little stitch. And if you feel it's necessary, you can stitch down the cap in other spots as well. So you can stitch through to the top of the cap again, maybe somewhere where you already embroidered a scale, and then make a little stitch on top of it to somehow sew the top and or the cap together with the gills, I should say. And once you're happy with that, you can weave in both yarn ends. Cut them both short. And that's our little toadstool done. So let's do the standing test. Yay! Thank you very much for crocheting along with me. I hope you enjoyed this little project. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up for me and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It helps out the channel a lot. So I really appreciate it. And turn on notifications so that you don't miss any of my future crochet tutorials. Thank you very much for being here. See you in the next one. Bye.